There's lots of property advice out there, and most of it is outright BS. My team has sent me a few links today of videos they want me to react to as to why this advice isn't suitable for everyone and it could cost you tens of thousands of dollars. Let's check out the first video.
There is no fucking way I would be investing in the Australian property market at this stage ever again. What I've learned about the Australian government,
kind of nonsense,
what they're
but
doing
anyway,
in the way of taxing property in Australia is disgusting. In Sydney right now, half the price of a new home is just taxes. And by the way, that's not my opinion. That's a report directly from the HIA. The HIA is Australia's leading industry building body, so they know what they're talking about. They pointed out that the average house and land package costs around $1.2 million, and of that $1.2 million, almost $600K goes straight to the government in taxes, fees, levies, and regulatory costs. All
right, without looking at this, I can just about tell this dude sells villas in Bali. Now, there's a couple of things with this. Firstly, I completely agree. Australian property is taxed out of the nose, right? It's horrible. In fact, we've got one of the highest and most highly regulated tax environments in the world. However, what people don't understand is Australian property is also some of the most lucrative in the world as well. So I understand the fact that yes, when it comes to land taxes, stamp duties, capital gains, all these different taxes, it makes it appear on face value that it's very expensive to own property. However, what most people like this don't really understand is in order to pay those taxes, you've got to get you're getting a return for that money. In other words, you simply wouldn't invest in an environment like this if you're getting taxed too much unless the benefit wasn't worth it. In other words, the way the Australian population grows, there is a reason why Australian property has doubled just about every 15 years for the last couple hundred years here. There's also a reason as to why it doesn't happen in most other countries. So at the end of the day, I would much rather pay more taxes over here on the basis that my capital growth is going to be far outpacing everywhere else around the world. That's the reality. All right, let's go through clip number 2.
This is what 1,715,000 buys you in Sydney. Let's check it out.
Firstly, fuck that.
Alrighty, legends. Okay. This house is located in Glebe, a suburb 3K southwest of the CBD. It has some original features remaining, like that fireplace. It has an attic. Check out this kitchen. Skylight above. Bedroom here. Balcony, which we do not have access to. Guys, this is a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom house that sits on 101 square meters of land. And if you know Glebe, this particular location is set right near the new Sydney Fish Market, making it a very highly desirable spot to live in. Bathroom here on the left-hand side. This house does come with a rear lane. So,
all right. So with a video like this, and just to be clear, guys, if you want to buy a home like this, then go buy a home like this. There's no problem with that. In fact, obviously, the closer you are to the CBD, the smaller properties get, the more expensive they get. And if this is something you want to live in for the next 20, 30 years, go do it. Like, there's no problem. The question begs, is this a good investment property? It depends. If you're going to simply sit on a property like this and hold it and wait for capital growth, I'd probably say I could probably reuse that $1.7 million in multiple different markets and make way better returns in growth. However, this does look like a property that you probably could do a renovation on and flip pretty quickly for a really good profit, but it also depends on the suburb fundamentals. For example, if I was to buy this for 1.7, spend 300 grand on practically rebuilding the entire home cosmetically, and I can sell this thing for 2.5, 2.6 $1 million, I'd take that deal all day long. But the problem is you need $1.7 million to start with in order to buy it from the seller. Then you also need a 20% deposit in most cases. Then you're going to need that $300,000 generally in cash in order to go do that. In other words, I've got to put in $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 into this deal to make that 500 grand. The point of the story is, guys, I could use that $600,000, invest it in a far better, more efficient way to make way more money than dumping into one dilapidated property in a high-end suburb in Sydney. All right, here goes video number 3.
Simon, I've heard you say that you'd rather one commercial property over 10 residential properties. Can you explain why?
It's mainly because I like money and I hate doing stuff. And what I mean by that...
Okay, I can see where this is going. Anytime that you hear someone say one type of property is better than another type of property, understand that there is a vested interest in play here. In other words, they're trying to sell you something. To be frank, I own multiple residential properties. I make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year by owning that portfolio. So to say that by owning residential properties, therefore you don't like money, is utter nonsense. But keep in mind, this guy's probably trying to sell you a commercial property. And if we watch the rest of the video, I can almost bet he's going to try and do that. The problem that most people don't understand when it comes to commercial, to be clear, guys, commercial is fantastic. It is great to invest in. It's something that you absolutely want to have in your portfolio. However, commercial property generally is more so for more sophisticated investors who've got a portfolio behind them first. We recommend starting off with residential. Why? It's safer. It's based on population growth versus houses, supply and demand. Commercial property is based on economic performance. So there's a lot more variables in play when it comes to commercial. The biggest risk you're going to have is trying to find a tenant for a commercial property, in other words, a business. See, when you go residential, looking for everyday mums and dads. Normal people are the ones who rent it. When you buy commercial, it's a business that rents it. So unless you're going to find a commercial property with a really good tenant in the first place, trying to find an empty commercial property and then going and finding a business, that is where most people burn hundreds of thousands of dollars because the vacancy can be up to years of not having a business renting out your property. And here goes video number 4.
The new research has found that it can take more than 50 years for a nurse, a teacher, a vet and bricklayer to buy a Sydney property.
Fucking hell. A new study has just found it's going to take you up to 50 years to save a deposit in Sydney. Okay, just for quick numbers, guys. Median house price in Sydney is around 1.3 million. If we're looking at 50 years, and then let me just do a quick calculation here. So we're looking at a $1.3 million median house price. Divide that by a 50-year period, times that by a 20% deposit. So you're looking at 260K over 50 years. According to the research, that means that the average person they're assuming is saving $100 per week. And therefore, yes, it is going to take you 50 years to save $260,000 for a deposit on a property in Sydney. I don't think that we needed new research for that. Keep in mind, guys, if it actually genuinely takes you 50 years to go and save a deposit, you've got to consider property is going to double every roughly 15 years here in the country. That means it's going to essentially triple between that time frame. So instead of needing $260,000, you're going to end up needing, let's just call it $780,000 as a down payment, and therefore it's going to take you way longer than 50 years. Guys, stop watching the news. This is another example as to why you need to stop getting your money, investment, wealth advice from the mainstream media because it's fucking nonsense. If you guys have seen advice like this before, you're probably not alone. But the main thing to remember, guys, you've got to consider the risks and the cons, the negatives that come with those kinds of strategies. If you want clear, strategic advice for you and your situation, more than happy to help.